What I was trying to describe was how to make use of your cultural forces in terms of changing other parts of the organization rather than trying to change the culture. Turns out cultures are easier to tap into than they are to change. They don't change very much very fast. And the secret for doing that is targeting. You need to target a few behaviors that are key and critical in either performance or strategic performance. And you need a few sources of emotional energy that are already underutilized in the culture. And then you need the help of a handful, sometimes a double handful, of informal leaders who already make use of their cultural influence in motivating people that work for them. And so those three are the critical few. But the major message here is it's a lot easier to work with and within your culture to get alignment and energy out of it than it is to change and reform and replace it. Where the organization is struggling to change something else. Either they want to change the way they run the place, or they want to change the organization of their field force. Any place where that kind of change process or programmatic is underway, the likelihood of being able to use the culture that they have to do that is very high, and they ought to at least consider that possibility. Organizations should be thinking now about how to use their cultural situation. I don't use the term culture singularly very much because most organizations are multicultural. There's an overall culture, there are subcultures. But they need to think about how to use the emotional elements in those cultures more than they do, because that can take them from what I would call rational compliance to emotional commitment. And that's a significant plus. And I don't believe I've ever seen a culture that didn't have underutilized sources of emotion. Well, most of the practical approaches we have come from multiple sources. So we have examples in the Middle East, we have examples out of Australia, we have examples out of North America, many of them. I think the most interesting example is actually from a technology company that is quite familiar to many people. And they started back in the 1930s as a entrepreneurial venture and developed a culture that was very admirable. It was very simple. There were really only 4 behaviors. Those behaviors were very clear. I think the first one was discipline teaming. The second one was next bench sharing, which meant that the CEO wanted his engineers and scientists to cross out of their area and work across other areas to learn what was going on because he thought it was a source of ideas. The third one was treat people with great dignity. And the fourth one, surprisingly enough, was connect with your local community. And at first I didn't understand why was that in there. And now I realize it was how they were able to understand the cultural influence from the people they were hiring. Now, the company has gone through all kinds of different transformations and problems. So they thought they had no longer had the HP way. And it turns out that a new CEO came in. She happened to be a very accomplished woman. And she had the wisdom to say, I don't think the old culture is dead. I think it's hiding out there someplace behind closed doors or underneath the stairway. I think we ought to be able to resurrect it. And they actually did. And they resurrected it. I think it was the HP way now, but they were the essence of the 4 behavioral priorities was still relevant. And so they were able to recapture it.